I still remember the night my uncle called me with that familiar tone of quiet urgency. It wasn't unusual. Our families were close, and I'd grown up seeing him as a second father. But that night, there was something different in his voice. Something tired, maybe even desperate. He'd been unwell for a few weeks, something with his lungs, and the doctors had advised complete rest. His wife, Aunt Rima, was doing her best. But the constant pressure of cooking, cleaning, and attending to him had started to wear her down. "Beta, I need a small favor," he said. "Could you stay with us for a few nights? Rima could really use an extra pair of hands." Without hesitation, I agreed. Their home felt familiar yet quieter than usual when I arrived. My uncle lay in bed, frailer than I remembered, his breathing shallow, his voice hoarse. He looked up at me with grateful eyes and smiled. Aunt Rima greeted me at the door, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She was always impeccably dressed, always composed, but tonight, even she looked worn down. "You've come at the right time," she said softly, ushering me inside. "He needs help, and I just can't do everything alone." The first few days slipped by quickly. I ran errands, cooked simple meals, and kept the house in order. Rima and I settled into a quiet rhythm. She attended to Uncle's medicine and feeding schedule, while I did most of the physical tasks. I admired her devotion. She would sit beside him for hours, stroking his hand gently, murmuring words of comfort. It was touching. In the evenings, she and I would chat in the kitchen over tea. She spoke about how hard it had been watching someone, once so full of life, fade into silence. I listened, offered what encouragement I could. Somewhere between cleaning dishes and arranging groceries, I began to see her not just as my aunt, but as a woman shouldering a heavy burden with grace. She was still beautiful, elegant, poised, but there was a tiredness behind her eyes that no sleep could fix. I never thought anything of it. In fact, I began to admire her resilience. There was no reason to doubt her character. After all, she was caring for a sick husband with absolute dedication. One evening, after tucking Uncle into bed, she looked at me across the dimly lit living room and smiled. "Thank you," she said. "You've made this house feel lighter." Her words stayed with me. I felt proud to be useful, to be trusted. I thought I was doing the right thing, supporting family when they needed me most. But back then, I didn't know. I didn't know that trust can be misplaced. That even under the same roof, people carry secrets wrapped in silence. And I certainly didn't know how one quiet favor would change the way I saw everything, and everyone, in my life. The days continued with the same quiet routine. Uncle's condition remained stable, fragile, but no worse. My presence had eased the load, and Aunt Rima seemed lighter, more rested. But as the week passed, subtle shifts in her behavior began to catch my attention. It began with the way she dressed. Not during the day, when she remained in simple cotton saris, practical and neat. But in the evenings, once Uncle was tucked in for the night, she would change into something more striking. Flowing robes, scented with perfume, her hair styled loosely as if she were preparing for something more than sleep. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe she simply wanted to feel good about herself, to hold on to some semblance of normalcy amid the stress. But then came the late-night phone calls. She'd excuse herself from the room, stepping onto the balcony with her mobile pressed close. Her voice, once calm and maternal, turned softer, almost playful. I couldn't hear what she said, only the low hum of conversation, quickly hushed if I walked too close. I tried not to jump to conclusions. This was my aunt, the woman I'd watched care for my uncle with such devotion. Maybe she was calling an old friend for support, someone she could confide in. Everyone needs a way to cope, I told myself. But doubt has a way of creeping in like a draft through a cracked window. Quiet at first, then chilling. Then came the visits. At first, I didn't pay much attention to the neighbor, Rohit. A well-built man in his 30s, he lived across the street and was known around the neighborhood for his charm and social nature. He came under the guise of checking in on my uncle, dropping off fruits, asking about his health. It all seemed innocent enough. But he came too often, sometimes twice in a day, often in the late hours, and he never stayed long enough to speak with Uncle. More often, I'd find him in the kitchen with Rima, their conversation hushed, filled with inside jokes and stolen glances. Once I walked in and saw them standing too close, closer than comfort allows between neighbors. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something unspoken had shifted between the three of us. I found myself watching Rima more carefully, searching for signs. I noticed how her laughter changed around Rohit, more musical, more alive. I noticed how her smile lingered longer after he left. A war began inside me. Part of me didn't want to believe it. She was family. I owed her trust, respect. And yet another part whispered that something was deeply wrong. I thought of Uncle, frail, unaware, holding on to faith in a woman who might no longer deserve it. I told myself I needed proof, that maybe I was overthinking. But deep inside, I knew. Something was unraveling, and I was about to see it all come apart. It was a quiet Thursday evening when everything changed, the kind of night where the stillness feels rehearsed, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Uncle had drifted off to sleep early after his evening medication. I helped Rima clean up the dinner dishes, the air thick with a strange kind of anticipation. She barely spoke, humming softly to herself, lost in thought. When I asked if she needed help with anything else, she shook her head and smiled faintly. "No, you've done enough. You should get some rest." But I couldn't sleep. The feeling in my chest, heavy, uneasy, refused to let me settle. Something wasn't right. I tiptoed to the hallway, listening. The house was silent, except for the slow, rhythmic sound of Uncle's breathing from his bedroom. Then I heard it. A soft click. The back door. Curiosity, or maybe something deeper, pulled me from my room. I crept down the hallway and peeked into the kitchen. The light was dim, but I saw Rima slip out the back, draped in a shawl, barefoot. A few minutes passed before I saw the outline of another figure joining her in the yard. Rohit. My breath caught in my throat. There, beneath the veil of darkness, I saw them embrace, like lovers, not neighbors. I should have turned away, but my feet were frozen. They spoke in hushed voices, their faces inches apart. Then she laughed. The same laugh I'd once thought was reserved for her husband. I backed away, heart racing, unsure what to feel. Anger, disbelief, shame, all collided inside me. Still, I needed clarity. I couldn't live with suspicion anymore. The next night, I stayed awake intentionally. I left my door slightly ajar, lights off, and waited. Hours passed. Just past midnight, I heard the same soft footsteps. I followed them, silent and careful. To my shock, Rima wasn't heading to the backyard. She slipped into the guest room, Rohit. Already inside, seated casually on the bed, their bodies entwined without hesitation. What I saw wasn't vague. It was intimate. It was betrayal in its rawest form. My head spun. I returned to my room, not knowing what to do with what I had just witnessed. She had lied. Not in words, but in actions, in stolen moments, hidden meetings, and secret exchanges while my uncle, her husband, lay sick and vulnerable just a few doors away. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to wake my uncle and show him the truth. But my voice failed me. Instead, I sat in the dark, the silence now deafening, my mind unraveling. How could someone be so gentle with one person and so cruel behind their back? What I had just witnessed couldn't be unseen. And now I had a choice to make. Expose the truth and shatter a fragile peace, or protect the illusion and carry the weight of this betrayal alone. The morning after I witnessed everything, sunlight streamed through the curtains like nothing had changed. But everything had. The walls of the house, the scent of tea brewing in the kitchen, even Aunt Rima's cheerful humming, all felt poisoned now, coated in a lie I could no longer ignore. I avoided her that morning. My thoughts were a cyclone of questions. Did she love my uncle at all? Was she simply waiting for him to die so she could be free? How long had this affair been going on? But most of all, I wrestled with one tormenting question. Should I tell him? I found him sitting upright that afternoon, coughing lightly, his hands trembling as he reached for a glass of water. I helped him, trying to meet his eyes. They were still kind, still full of trust. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I hesitated. My throat tightened. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." He nodded, unaware of the war raging inside me. Later that evening, I stepped outside to clear my mind. The sky was fading from orange to violet, and the street was quiet. That's when Rohit passed by, nodding at me with casual arrogance, like nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't betrayed someone sleeping a few feet away from him the night before. I clenched my fists, but said nothing. Back inside, Rima was preparing dinner. She smiled when she saw me. "You've been so helpful. You should stay longer. Uncle really appreciates you." I looked at her, really looked at her. How could she act so normal, so calm? Did she feel no guilt? I didn't eat that night. I spent hours in my room imagining every possible outcome. If I told my uncle, the heartbreak might destroy what little strength he had left. If I stayed silent, I would be complicit in her betrayal. Either way, someone would suffer. Eventually, I realized the truth. There was no right choice, only a necessary one. That night, I left. I packed my things quietly, wrote a short note thanking them for their hospitality, and walked out while the house slept in silence. I didn't confront Rima. I didn't tell my uncle. I knew that truth, when served too late, could be just as cruel as the lie. But I couldn't be part of it anymore. Months passed. I moved back in with my parents and distanced myself from that chapter of my life. I heard that my uncle's health had slightly improved. He still believed in the woman beside him. Maybe that belief gave him strength. As for me, I carry that night like a scar. A reminder that betrayal doesn't always shout. It often whispers behind closed doors. Sometimes the hardest part of love is knowing when silence is mercy. And when it's just cowardice dressed in peace. And I still don't know which one I chose.